Welcome to the Lessons from the Game podcast, the podcast where we break down the hard-hitting lessons from rugby and show how they apply performance, mindset and resilience, both on and off the field.
I'm Ben Pegner, and alongside Guthrie Steenkamp, we sit down with top players, coaches and experts to uncover what it really takes to succeed.
Good day everybody, and welcome to another episode on our Lessons from the Game podcast with my co-host Ben Pegner. We've got an unbelievable guest today. She's the First Lady of Springbok Rugby. She has won 2 World Cups and a British and Irish Lions series. She has worked with over 7 coaches and 21 Springbok captains, and she has been pivotal to the success of the Springbok team over 20 years. She is none other than Annelee Murray. Annelee, welcome to our show. How are you doing?
Oh, thanks so much, Guthrie and Ben. It's great to be here with you and great to sort of catch up again, Guthrie. We've walked a long path together. I think from 2004, when you played your first test against Scotland, I think. I remember that. I remember you as a youngster. I remember you meeting Yana, getting married, sort of walked your journey with you. So it's great to be here and reminisce and just chat a little bit about, women in sport, and thank you for giving us this recognition.
No, really looking forward to chatting. It brings so much memories. I won't lie to you, and I was a bit nervous before this podcast, seeing that it's you. You've had such a massive role in my career, and we're going to deep dive into that. But before we get into that, Ben, brother, how are you doing, man? All the way in England, you right?
No, I'm good.
After the weekend, the Six Nations, everything okay? You still all right?
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, but I'm excited. I'm excited, mate. You're in shaky territory to be trying to give me grief this today, because we got someone here who can give us some insights. Yeah. Someone who knew you when you had hair, maybe or maybe not. But
yeah.
Ben, I'm looking forward to some stories and just some insights from Annelee. It's great to have you here.
Firstly, before I get started, Annelee, I just want to say thank you for everything that you have done for us. As a Springbok player, I think there's more than enough Springbok players that can share their stories with us and what you've done, not just for them, but for their families. And, you've played such a massive role with the Springbok team over the years. But as we always start our podcast, we like to ask our guests, from your experience and your career in rugby, what is the one lesson that you have learned that you can share with young rugby players or coaches that are aspiring to achieve greatness?
Guthrie, I think it's that you can never stop learning. I think from the beginning, when you get given an opportunity and you get into the job that you really want, or you start of your career, you're kind of very chuffed and happy to be there. But I think it's that you can never stop learning. I mean, I retired from the Springboks, but not really from sport and rugby, and I now have another career still helping the Springboks on the commercial side and doing shoots and that, and working with some individuals. I also have some cricket players and golfers that I work with now. So I think it's that you can never stop learning. I am very excited this week because it's Super Bowl week, and I've been to 2 Super Bowls, and I've spent a lot of time at other sporting codes, and I think that's where you can learn so much from other sporting codes, whether it's a tiny little thing. I spent some time with ice hockey teams, with NFL teams, with AFL teams, with the Proteas, with hockey teams, with wheelchair basketball. So every code brings something different, and I think you can take that in. So I think as an aspiring coach or a young person, that you can always learn something that is just that you can bring to the party and make that small little marginal gain, which is what as a coach, makes a difference.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. I think we're all learning. We're constantly, myself and Ben, we're always learning as well after every podcast episode, but myself as a coach as well, being involved in professional rugby now, I know that every single week you need to have an ability to learn, which is so important. But Andy, I want to go in right into the heat of things. That 2019 World Cup. All right, World Cups as a former player has become really emotionally draining for me. After the 2023 World Cup, I wanted to take a month sabbatical, but I couldn't. I needed to work. But 2019, you were there. That was special. After losing, if I'm not mistaken, against the All Blacks in the pool stages, and then still pulling that rabbit out of the hat and going all the way to win the World. Can you share your experience about that World Cup?
I think if we go back to 2018, that was really the start with this new coaching regime. Rassie came on board again. He had been with us. You were with us in 2011 World Cup. Rassie and Jacques were there as consultants. And then Rassie sort of was a director of rugby and he was involved. And then he left. He went and learnt at Munster and he learnt things and he always talks about. And he came back in 2018, and that was really the start of 2019. And actually, interestingly enough, 2023 was the actual target to win the World Cup. Then we started with this journey in 2018. Rassie kind of put the first meeting, he put the cup, the William Webb Ellis Cup in the middle, because as a winning nation, you get a replica cup. So SA Rugby now have 4 in their cabinet, but at that time we had 2. And he put it in the middle, and he said that, that is, from now on, there's no egos. Everybody's the same, whether you are the kit master, you're the physio, you're the PR manager, you're the coach, you're the head coach, you're the fitness and coach, you're the analyst, whatever you are, everybody's equal. All the players are equal. And what he did was he had a board, and he wrote down every single player and where they came from. Makazolo Mapimpi from the Transkei, Lukanya Am from King Williamstown, Rene Naylor from Belhar. And when he wrote down everyone's where they came from, you all realized that you all had a journey, and not everyone's journey was easy. And some people, you put the Francois Lowe, Bishop's Court, and you put your school, Bishops, and some schools were like really private, expensive schools. Some schools were not. And everyone had a journey to get there, and it wasn't easy. Flo's journey wasn't easy. He had to work hard because he was, he'd sort of come through an easy way, but it wasn't easy to get there. And no egos, and everyone was the same. And he sort of said that it starts now. So throw out your things now. We're going to have this talk about elke een dra sy eie tassie. So in English, that means everyone carries your own suitcase, Ben. That doesn't mean to say that, you don't help anyone else, but we are one team here. So, if you're on the field and you need to help someone clean out a ruck, then that's what you do. Or if you're a flanker and you need to take the ball out for the scrum off, then that's what you do. Whereas my job, if I had to make ice towels during half time, then that's what I did. But that wasn't part of my job description, but we all helped each other. And I think that's where it really, really started, is to support each other. No egos. We all came from different backgrounds. We're not all friends, but we're all together we're all in this together. And that's where it really started. And then, we won in New Zealand that year in 2018, and we won the rugby championships. And then we won by 2 points in New Zealand that year. Cheslin came on. He started and he scored that amazing try just as he came on. And then the next year, and then we went to Argentina and we won the rugby championships. And then the next year we went back to Wellington. They loved taking us to Wellington in New Zealand. And we actually were far behind. And then we came back, and Herschel Yankees, Peter Steff threw a pass to Herschel Yankees, and we scored in the 81st minute. And Andre had a hard kick, and he kicked over, and we drew 34 all. So, and that's when the team really started believing, because Rassie came in and he said he had 3 things: to transform, to win, and only once you transformed. And transformation doesn't mean black or white, as people in South Africa would think. It means how you think, how you do things, how your actions are, how you play. That's what transform is. But we transformed the team, and we all had the same mission. Once we started winning, could we then give hope to the country? Could we then attract commercial partners? Could we bring money in and all that? So that's how it started. And then by the time we actually got to Japan, we went to Japan. We were the first team to arrive in Japan. And because we played Japan in a warm-up game, which really helped us. We were there for 3 weeks longer than anyone else. So we were there for really nearly 2.5 months in Japan. But it was a sacrifice that we did, and we wanted to do. And we got to Japan, and we just had this amazing support. So did every other team. We thought, wow, the Japanese love us and everything. And we played them until we played them in the quarterfinal, when suddenly, we didn't get enough food, we didn't get enough this, the lights went out at certain times, just for that week, and the next week it was turned on again, and we were okay again. But the Japanese were unbelievable. So, and then we started believing, the team, and everyone believed that the team were playing for something more than just themselves. They were playing for a country that so desperately, just so desperately needed this, and sport has the unique ability to bridge gaps and bring people together, and more so in South Africa than anywhere, I think, that we've seen that, So that's how it started, Guthrie.
Yeah, so Andy, that's brilliant. Look, I can definitely say I've been fortunate. I've been there when we won the World Cup, and I've been with some of those big games. I'm also playing in Soweto and see what sport can do for our country. But I would like to know more. Tell me, is there more stories that happened in Japan, more than just lights going off? Didn't suitcases or anything get lost? Except for that, was everything going well? Was there any other challenges you guys faced as a team in Japan?
Look, the operations team had been to Japan many times and had really done their homework so well. Charles Wessels, the Springbok team manager. He's really, really astute and good at his job. That's why he's been there for so long. He doesn't leave a stone unturned. So the logistics team and the operations team and the strength and conditioning coach had been there many times, and everything was to the kind of which restaurants we were going to go to and where we're going to eat. So we had many challenges, but we'd also prepared exceptionally well. And my job, sort of being part of the operational team, was everything off the field, So obviously not coaching and not on the field. The only time I ever ventured my opinion in the coaching world was with my first coach, Harry Viljoen. It was a very funny story. He dropped Andre Vos as captain the day before we played a match in against Argentina in Port Elizabeth. He made Bobby Skinstad the captain, and I was terribly upset by this, only purely from an emotional point of view, because obviously I cared about the players. And Fossi was such a lovely guy, and so was Bob, but so is Bob. And, and I sort of went to him and I said, it's really a bad decision to drop, and not meaning from a rugby perspective. And he gave me such a mountain of words that I've never forgotten it, and I've never mentioned another thing. And now I'm just an armchair critic, and I don't think that should be picked, but I keep it to myself. So that was the only time I ever ventured into giving my opinion in the coaching world. But so our job was to get everything off the field. And there were challenges, there were challenges. The language was a big challenge in Japan, but we surrounded ourselves with translators and people that were just unbelievable and really supportive. We had a group of massage therapists that traveled with us that were Japanese. And they adopted South Africa as their team. We still keep in touch with them. The liaison officers, we still keep in touch with, like we did in Paris and France. We still keep in touch with those guys and our security detail and all that. We really gave a lot back to Japan as well, to make rugby sort of more accessible and open. And we did clinics and we did all sorts of things. Whatever they asked of us, we did. And I think that was part of the success. Rassie said to me beforehand, what about the families? Are we going to allow them to come? And I said, absolutely, you have to. And I said, we've built this culture that it's a family environment, because if you're happy at home, you're happy, at work. And the rugby player's job is to play rugby, and their work is rugby. And the coach, the families need to know that they are welcome and access. So our work was tripled, because we had this whole entourage of extra 86 people traveling with us. So that meant booking more hotel rooms, more buses, getting them to the stadium, getting them back from the stadium, ensuring that, that their boundaries were kept. Your wife doesn't go to your boardroom with you. Well, they didn't come to the team room, but we made sure that there were other places for them to go to. So no detail was left unturned, but there were challenges, especially, as I said to you, in the week that we played Japan in the quarterfinals, because the whole of Japan sort of celebrated their amazing run in the World Cup and what they brought to their country. And, we were training And we sort of trained at the times that we played. So it was night time, and we got to get the training field, and the lights were suddenly off. And, we had to sort of wait half an hour for them to put on. Because, oh, no, sorry. And the Japanese are not like that. They're very organized, polite, accommodating people. And, then the dietitian would say, sure, but, I didn't have enough salmon for the meal today. And the Japanese would go, sorry. And so there were little things, but we just took it in our stride. And when we beat Japan, we sort of felt that they then accepted us again and supported us again against Wales. And that was a really tight game. I mean, the only difference was Handre's kick at the end and Damien's amazing try. And then, then they equaled, and then that kick, and that's what separated us. The final was actually a bit of a letdown compared to the two semi-finals were unbelievable games, the All Blacks against England and us against Wales. And then that led us to, once we'd beaten them there, kind of felt like a lot like Paris that week. Remember when we were in Paris in 2007, the Eiffel Tower was green and gold, and we had all these signs, and I looked for those signs because players are very sort of superstitious and that kind of stuff. And when we did the final press conference, Rassie and Francine did the press conference before the captain's press conference, because Francine now was obviously going for his second World Cup, and the whole roof was green and gold, and I was like, oh my God, this is a sign. And everyone was just, it was incredibly calm. We kind of just knew that I knew that the team had this. It was same in Paris. It was obviously tighter game. But the game in Japan, we just felt that we had this because they were playing for a greater purpose than just for themselves. They were playing for a country that was not united, and it was just unbelievable to bring that trophy home.
Wow, Annelee, there's so much there. I was just making notes actually, because there's so many lessons there. This is lessons from the game, but I guess, and I'll come back to them in a second, because you talk about basically a growth mindset and being curious, and with the Harry Viljoen example, staying in your lane, and probably you've got so many lessons that you can share with us, and with the listeners. I thought I'd just, ask you, what was the hardest part of your job? Because obviously there's all of those highlights, all those amazing, when people see the glory, they see the World Cup wins and things like that. What's the hardest part of your job, and how did you deal with those times? And can you give advice to anybody listening and, who maybe is in a different walk of life, maybe in the corporate space or whatever area they're in, but, can you maybe give us some insight there, please?
I think the most difficult part of my job as a female in a man's environment or man's world, really, and being sort of at the forefront at the beginning of that, I was the only lady for a long time. That was really hard, and the decisions that you have to make, they're family decisions. You travel for 9 months a year. You need your family support. It wasn't, not every coach allowed families to travel with. So as a female in that that was sort of the hardest part of the loneliness, the having to prove yourself. I had to put my head down. I had to work harder. I had to work smarter than anyone else to gain the respect. As a female, I think it should be celebrated in this unique environment. And your family support is part of that success. Female nurturing is important. We, in 2007, when I was with Guthrow, there were two ladies. It was myself and Cheryl Calder, who was the eye vision coach. And then Cheryl left, and then it was myself again. And, and then there was another lady renamed Mandela, this physiotherapist who was with the team for 15 years. She's also won 2 World Cups now, and just recently retired. And then there was a third one, and then there was a fourth one. And Rassie should be celebrated for that. He was at the forefront of having 4 women in a team, and that was the diversity of the team was unbelievable, and that was unheard of in world rugby. Now I know that England have more, and Australia have more, and New Zealand have always had 1 or 2 ladies. So I think that the hardest part was sort of, being on your own a lot. And then when more ladies came, female nurturing is important. Just having the softer touch, off the field kind of things that females think of that men don't really think of. If there's an injury, someone goes down on the field, immediately I would be in the medical room, just, in the background, just listening to what the diagnosis was. I would be on the phone phoning the player's wife or partner or parent if they didn't have one, just saying, listen, just this is a serious injury, but he's in good hands. Or, I would go to the hospital with them. I remember with Harry Viljoen, actually, in fact, we played in America, in Houston, Texas, and Joe van Niekerk went down. And rugby was it was in 2003. Rugby really wasn't big in America in that time. And we had to go in a taxi to the hospital because there actually wasn't even an ambulance. And remembering, phoning, and cell phones weren't like a big thing, and you didn't have internet and that kind of stuff. Phoning Joe's mom, saying that, listen, it's going to be okay. He's got a serious injury, but he was out for 9 months, ACL. So just giving that emotional and sort of physical presence support to the families is very important. And I think that was, goes back to you can never stop learning. And I think in any industry, you can be, now I'm working with different athletes, and I've got different dynamics. Cricket players do different things to rugby players. So do golfers, their needs are different. And I'm just learning all the time. And I think that's the big thing, that, the lesson is that you can always learn from another sport or another industry.
That sounds like a huge takeaway for you, that continuing your learning and growth mindset. It's brilliant. Geez, what were we going to say, bud?
No, it's just takes me back. I remember the first time when I saw Annelee. I was still back then the younger rising stars coming through, and eventually when I joined the Springboks, and I'm not gonna lie, I was scared of you. You had this presence about you, not taking any nonsense. All right, you don't want to get the bad side of Annelee. As years progressed, saw the softer side, the more nurturing side. Yeah. But we as players back in our day, we were scared of you. You didn't take any nonsense. But I know you hate this term, Annelee. Being back then we used to call you the Springbok mom. You hated that because you were not really our mom. But it's just you cared so much for us. It's like, yes, you had your job, and we could genuinely feel. I'm just getting goosebumps talking about it now. You genuinely cared for us, and good, the fact that you cared so much about the team, that it was more than a job. Did that play a massive role into your success in terms of what you've achieved with the Springboks? How did that help you on your journey to earning the trust of those around you and earning the respect of your peers?
Thanks, Gary. Yeah, I think I had to be that hard person initially, because when I started in 2001, I had Joost van der Westhuizen and Mark Andrews, Ostu Rand, Chester Williams, and they were, Mark Andrews was like sitting like this, and Joost, and saying, when I did my first presentation to them, I could hardly talk. I had to sort of like almost breathe into a brown paper bag because I was so nervous. And they sort of thought, well, here I am, I can just get them, can you get us free beers? I'm like, guys, that's not what this is about. This is about the brand and about making your lives easier and whatever. So I had to learn with those guys who were quite hard on me initially. And so, I also developed a softer side. And you're right. I mean, when you guys came in, when Smitty came in and Victor, I was with them their whole careers. I think, I was quite hard in the beginning, and I had to take a look at myself. I remember once, Guthrie, you might remember her, a lovely lady, Hazel Lewis from Southern Sun. She was she was a great sort of leveler and mentor for me, because Southern Sun is the Springbok sponsor, and she was just a wonderful woman. No job was too big for her. Whatever you asked her, she would deliver. And one day she called me aside and she said to me, Annelee, you really didn't talk very nicely to the concierge. And I think, I mostly had a bad day, or I was like worried about something, I was thinking about something, and I was like, whatever. And And I had to take a good hard look at myself and realize that, kindness and just being nice means so much to everyone. And I had to, I listened to her and I apologized to her and to the gentleman in question. And I think that that's really helped me so much in the career. And that I now, years after I've really retired full time from the team, I still have those relationships. The relationships are key. I mean, I can still pick up the phone to many people. And they'll take my call, whereas, and they'll try and help me if I can. And I think those are the lessons that you learn, and you become older and wiser. And I did have to give up a lot. I had to give up having a family, but I did that because I wanted to. So it was more than just a job for me. It was actually a way of life for 23 years. So so it was that. You're 100% right. Would I have regrets? No. Maybe having a family would be one regret. When I see the relationship that I have with my mum. But I have a wonderful niece and nephew, and I have a great support system that I can call on. But no regrets, just happy memories.
Thanks for sharing that. That's really really powerful, and thanks for being so open about your personal sacrifices as well. It's incredible. What, one thing that stands out for me, Annelee, is that I think, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, you both can correct me because you're both close to the situation, but it seems to me that the Springboks are probably the most connected team in the world to the people they represent. And I really do feel from the outside that there is a proper connection, and that they do, and the people do really feel like they represent them. And that it just occurred to me that must have put you in an extremely difficult position, because at the same time, not difficult maybe is an extreme word, but at the same time you have people who feel like they maybe own, or they have a right to access, I don't know, Cheslin Colby or whoever it might be, because they actually do represent me and they're from the same part of the world. And you're being polite, as you spoke about, because you want to, be kind and polite and deal with everything. But at the same time, you need to manage the say, I don't know, the confidentiality, the best interest of the players and the performance environment, so that they can perform at the weekend. But I suppose also 1 minute you're dealing with, I don't know, maybe taking calls from the president's office or something like that, to the next minute getting a sponsor asking for demanding time of, I don't know, John Smith or whoever. How there must be so much to that, and how did you manage that, and how did you juggle that? Sorry, it's a long question, but it's
look,
So long.
look, I had they used to call it. I mean, I still work like that, even though we're now in a digital age. And when I started, it was only, and social media has just plays such a big part now. Whereas you can do nothing, you can't do anything now, and you on social, called out on social media. Whereas didn't always have that, but sort of starting, I always had a little book, which I still have, a black book. Sometimes it was red or gold or green or whatever the color, but I write every single thing down. And when I sort of was talking about my book, I used to write everything down, just like, we're staying at this hotel, we're doing this, we're going to this restaurant, we're doing this, Guthrie did this, asked for me to this. So I used to write everything down, because you had to remember everything. But you're right. I mean, I was dealing with the president wanting to come and see the team on the day of the World Cup final, when the coach is saying, absolutely not. And I'm saying, but you absolutely, yes. And we're absolutely not changing it. And, and there has to be a give. And then the president's office like this and that, and he wants this to eat. And I was like, guys, my priority is actually the team. But that's fine. I'll put you onto the dietitian. She can look after what the president wants to eat. And then the president doesn't eat anything. He comes and you've made all this food, and then he doesn't eat anything. He's so interested in talking to the player, getting the president there on time, like ensuring, that the coach would allow. It happened, both times in 2007 and 2019, where, we had to make time for that. Whereas getting, Sia's dad didn't have a passport, he didn't have a visa, and he didn't have a flight ticket. And we had 5 days to get him to Japan. So I'm dealing with that. I'm dealing with the president's office. I'm dealing with the coach who doesn't want to change the game day. Kind of, the players must sleep late because we're playing late. Dealing with the ticketing, because there's suddenly huge demand for ticketing. And even in 2019 to 2023 was different, because tickets weren't digital in 2019, whereas in 2023 they were, so it was much easier. I was at the World Rugby. I was sort of carrying around like 5 million rands worth of tickets wherever I went. I was like so nervous of my backpack, but I think the big thing is from sort of the Springboks were seen. Rugby has an ugly side to it in South Africa. It can be seen as, initially it was seen as white, elitist, ugly, racist side. And the Springboks have changed that over the years because they've become accessible. I'm not saying I was solely responsible for that, but I pushed and pushed and pushed that they have to. You want the support of the public and the sponsors and everyone. You have to also be accessible. At the end of the day, and I tell the golfers and the cricketers as well that you are actually only people. You still do the same things. You go to the bathroom, you have to make supper, you have to take your kids to school, you have to do the same things as everyone else. But you have a platform to do that. And your responsibility while you hold that jersey and afterwards, because there's superstars that carry on afterwards, is you have a responsibility to your people and your supporters and your sponsors and your country to give back. And I think that once the players bought into that and they started buying into that really in the Heineke Meyer era, being more accessible, I had to fight for. We are having a signing session after an open session. We are having it. No, you're not. We are, and from like having an hour, you can have 15 minutes, which I knew would be an hour. So I'd say, okay, I'd settle for that. And then we would do that. And then, then Alistair could see her, and then Rassie was very open to that, and Jacques was open to that as well. So today the team are very accessible. I help Cheslin with a lot of his admin nowadays as well, being in Japan and being the big superstar that he is. He gets about 100 emails a day. And Cheslin, wants to respond to every single one of them, and I respond to them, and on his behalf, and got him to sign a whole lot of merchandise and photos and send them to people, because that's his responsibility. If he's a role model, he needs to give back to them. So the players understand that a lot more, and they've got really good platforms to be able to do that now. They can do a selfie video thanking someone for. And it means so much, and it become a new fan for life. Last week, Peter Steff, I had someone phone me just out the blue saying, please, can't you get hold of Peter Steff to send a birthday message to my son? And Peter Steff did it, and it was just, and this little boy sent one back, and he said, Peter Steff, I can't even talk, I'm so happy, thank you so much. And it meant so much more than his birthday party, it meant to this little 9-year-old boy. So, players have also embraced that, and not only, always, selfishly as well, because it gives them a platform, gives them commercial opportunities, it gives them a greater presence. So that's how the world works today.
Thanks, Annelee. That's amazing. Yeah.
Annelee, I think the way back in the day, you're 100% right. Players weren't too open to doing those events, those PRs. But I can tell you this, when you asked us, we would do it. All right. Just because out of the respect for you. And we knew you wouldn't make us do something if it wasn't a real interest for the team, for the country, for our brand as well. So I felt you managed that very well. But you have forged some great relationships over the years. And I wanted to talk about your relationship with Zelda Lajerons, unbelievable woman. She was the right hand for Nelson Mandela. And apparently had lunch with the legend himself, Madiba. We've all been fortunate. I was fortunate enough to meet Madiba on a few occasions back in the day, 2007. But also in 2005, when he mistakenly thought I was Os Durant, and I didn't have the heart to tell him that I'm not Os. I just took it. He just said, congratulations on the 95 World Cup. Said, thank you, Mr. President.
I'm glad you got that for me on that one. I was going to...
Yeah, I mean, Zelda is someone that I really, look up to. She's a wonderful person and has become a friend, a good friend. When I initially got the call from the then coach, Harry Viljoen, saying, we're going to be in Joburg next week and we want to meet Mr. Mandela. And I was like, where do I start? Anyway, so I researched a bit and got hold of Zelda, and it was proper phones those days, not all mobile phones, and got her number. And, from the minute I stepped off that bus, she was welcoming, and she was the gatekeeper to Madiba. And I would never, ever have the the gall to even put myself in her shoes or compare myself to her, having the gatekeeper to the greatest statesman in the world, in the history. But, in a way, we formed a bond because I was the gatekeeper into the Springboks at that time. So we had that, and, we could understand, would laugh about. I would say, I don't know what people think, if I keep 13 jerseys and 20 tickets under my bed and I just have them on hand at all times, she'd say, well, that's what people want. They think that Mr. Mandela can phone them at any time or they can come and see him, whatever. And yet I had the fortunate, the fortune of meeting Mr. Mandela many times and having lunch with him, Jake White, Zelda, and myself around his kitchen table once. He had an aura like you can't believe. There's one sort of famous story that John Smith always tells, that we were playing Australia at Ellis Park. Katie, I think you actually might even been playing.
Yeah,
and
2005.
And you guys were warming up. And Mr. Mandela, the day before I'd got the call, Mr. Mandela's coming to the match. So now obviously there's a scurry and there's extra security and there's security checks and his bodyguards come and there's a plan of what he's going to do when he gets there. And he's going to walk here and he's going to sit down and this person now is fighting to sit next to him and whatever. And then Mr. Mandela comes in his true Mr. Mandela style, and then he does exactly whatever they haven't done, scenario they haven't planned. He sort of, now I'm going down to the tunnel, I'm going to meet the players, I'm going into the change room. So he sort of was a bit late, I think, for traffic, and then saying hi to everyone, and he came down the tunnel. And he was halfway down the tunnel when the Springbok team were running up to get changed after the warm-up. And John Smith and the team were sort of around him. Smitty's like, can't Annelee now. I said, Mr. Mandela. Oh, okay. And the whole team was around there. Australians ran up. And George Gregan said to me, well, Annelee, what's happening, mate? I said, oh, Mr. Mandela. Yeah, and he went, oh, it's going to be a long day. And I think we beat the Aussies by like 30 points, which didn't always happen in those days. An Australian team, you could never write them off in sort of one golden era of Australian rugby. So he just had a presence. We never lost a match that he came to. Zelda was a big part of that. She was his right-hand woman. I took a lot of lessons from Zelda, and she's a wonderful, wonderful woman. No, I think the biggest sort of take from then to now is that everyone had a voice. When I joined in 2000, just in 1999, 2000, we had one photograph, and I could have one photograph, and I could have one interview a year on Women's Day because I was a woman. Whereas now everyone is equal. Everyone is equal. You can't become bigger than a team. And the coaches have shown that if you do, you get dropped and you don't come back. And, Rassie always speaks about, I would rather want the right people, not necessarily the best people. And obviously you have to be the best, you have to be a good player. But he might, choose one player that's a better team player than the other player that's more about himself. So every player and management had a voice. And it was all open and transparent. And I think that's the big thing. The team wasn't announced. You didn't go sit outside the door and you go in and you're in the team and you come out and you're upset. The team is announced in an open way. You sit up there, the team's put up. It's, if you want to ask why you're not in the team, you can ask and the coach will tell you that you need to go and work on this, this, and this, or this is my plan. You're going to be in the next match or whatever. So everything is transparent. And I think transparency is a big, big thing.
That's super powerful. I've heard a bit about that, sort of, instead of doing the one-to-ones, the open dialogue in a group environment. And I'm sure you've got so many tips, Annelee. One of the things that sort of when I was thinking, when I knew you were coming on, I wanted to ask you about was when you're in that environment, say in Japan for 2.5 months, what tips can you give to people who are, say, in a really busy work environment they're under pressure? How did you defrag from that? How did you get away? How did you de-escalate? How did you release pressure? And I was thinking about your black book. I'm sure you got some good restaurants and coffee shops around the world in that that you managed to sneak out to, or like you'd probably write a book about that, couldn't you?
I could actually, and that was one of my things that I absolutely loved, is that I was in charge of the team dinner.
amazing.
and it was away from the dietitian, so it was like you could have like a little bit of fat on your steak, and you could have chips and whatever. And I remember one funny thing. I don't know. I think Guthrie, I think you also played when we played in Terrigal, just outside Sydney, 2004 or 2005, and the players actually wore armbands, which we didn't know about. That week, they weren't getting a voice with SA Rugby at the time, and they wanted to talk about I think their match fees or something. I can't even remember. And they came out with like an armband, and I remember sitting next to the SuperSport guy, and he's like going, well, who died? Why have they got an armband on? And I was like, I don't know, because they went into the change room without an armband, and they came back with an armband, and the players got into huge trouble about that. But anyway, before that, that week, we were in Terrigal, just outside Sydney, and I found this fabulous restaurant. And I'm a big foodie. I go on a lot of food tours around the world and cooking courses, and I love my food. And I found this fabulous restaurant, and it was this like sort of really, really fine dining, which I realized very quickly into the team meal that this was not going to go down with us and John and Monty and David Barry and the guys, Victor and Bucky's. They were not having a little steak that was this big and 3-5 courses. And when I got back onto the bus, then they made the bus stop at McDonald's, and I had to pay for all their burgers because they were so hungry. I never made that mistake again. I always made sure that the team ate well, and I would. So to relieve pressure, I think one of the things I always did, whether I stayed in a hotel for 2 days or whether we're there for 2 weeks, I always, as soon as I got to the hotel, I would unpack my bags. I sort of over the years got these little bags that you packed. I packed the tracksuits in that bag, t-shirts in that bag, that underwear in that bag, whatever. And I'd take all these bags out and put them in the cupboard. I'd set up my computer, and I'd set up my little book there that I'd write everything in, and I would be very organized. So I think if you're organized, you sort of have less pressure on you because you know what you're going to do. And I had a weekly planner that I would stick to, and that I would know what was happening. But you have to be adaptable in this environment, as you know. I mean, you guys playing rugby on the field, if your play doesn't go your way, you have to adapt and you have to do that. So I had to be adaptable as well. But to sort of release pressure, the players would always have a day off. We would sort of have meetings and planning and sessions and going to look at places or recce's that we had to do in the morning. And then we'd always have an afternoon and evening off. And I would definitely get away. I'd go and have a massage. I'd have my nails done. I'd have my hair done. I'd do something for myself. Sometimes, it was on my own. Sometimes with the other girls. And then we'd always meet. If I was on my own, I'd meet up with some of the guys for dinner. They were always inclusive of me. Where are you on your own or whatever? But sometimes I wanted to be on my own. And but I would always do something once a week. For me and self-care for me. Right. I think that was very important.
That's really that's brilliant. That's excellent.
Annelee, I've got a question because we've seen, you've touched on it earlier, social media. It's become a very important aspect of the game. We see a lot of things go viral. And, if I take myself, I got my job opportunity at La Rochelle through Instagram Live, going crazy, sharing my truth, which was ridiculous. Jonah Gibbs contacted me and he said, listen, would you like to come coach at La Rochelle? I'm like, yeah, let's go. But anyway, social media is powerful and, and also building your own brand and what you stand for. And I think there's been a massive shift. If you look at a lot of the Springbok players, for example, I don't have Cheslin's number. I just sent him a DM on Instagram. We replied. We had a chat, just shows once again his humility. And I think that's also important. Even a lot of the Springbok players that I contact whose numbers I don't have, I send them a DM. They always reply. They're not bigger than the game, which is brilliant. But social media, it's a very important aspect. And how important is that in helping a player, building his brand? Back in the day, we had Brian Abana. We used to make fun of Brian. I just spoke to him beforehand. He used to have his GoPro and his selfie stick out after the game. I don't know how he got hold of it. It's still been his kit. So I think JJ maybe back then or Charles would get his selfie stick.
Or someone,
Yeah, or someone would always bring it out for him. So, Brian, we could see, was someone that was super invested. We used to make fun of him. But he stayed focused on what he needed to. He built his brand, and it helped him also after rugby. We also talk about sponsors having access to the player, how important is to build those relationships. What advice can you give a player in terms of to help him today in the modern day age, help to build his brand, something that can be sustainable, but also something which is authentic, that can help him also not only in his career, but also for life after rugby?
I think that's a very important question because, everything is just instant nowadays. So you can use it to advantage, or it can also be a disadvantage, on certain things. Because some things you do need to keep in team or in private, as you call it. But as a person, I think even Rassie has now embraced social media, whereas he never did. And he's realized that it's actually, he's quite an introvert, but that's the way that he associates, and he gets sort of his supporters and people behind him. On Christmas Day, he tweeted he's going for a walk, and he had 1,000 people walking with him on Christmas Day. So it can be a very, very powerful tool, but it can also be, to your detriment. So I think players are very aware of that. They do get media training, and that's very important, because it's part of what you have to do. Some players don't embrace it because they want their private lives to be private, but other players use it to their advantage because, rugby, so like being professional nowadays, I mean, you sort of start playing official rugby 16, 17, and you can't go to university. There are the exceptions that Pat Lambie, Beath, a couple of people did get degrees while they were playing, and we had to sort of find rooms for them to write exams in Edinburgh and Dublin and all different places. But nowadays, that is your career for 14, 15 years. So you need to decide what kind of person you're going to be, what you're going to do afterwards, and what you want. Do you want a following? Do you want to go into what you sort of want to go to? And I think you can almost manipulate which area you want to go into. Public speaking or broadcasting, or if that's what you want to do, or if you want to go into business, so it is important, but so is constant innovation all the time. I mean, as in on the field, you have to be constantly innovating. If something doesn't work this week in the scrum, then you have to change it, and next week you have to work it. I think social media allows you to have that platform. It's instant nowadays, not like the press conference. Everyone writes them down, and then you go and you wait to see what's in the paper tomorrow. They're announcing the team instantly. Everything's instant. So everyone's had to adapt how they work. And some players have done it well. Some players have chosen not to do it, and it's, as you say, it's a way of communicating. I actually, one of your players, Dylan Lates, I bumped into him last week, and it was so nice to bump into him and see him and chat to him, because the week before I'd actually done a commercial obligation for SA Rugby for Coke to announce Coke as the new sponsor. And Dylan's brother, Tristan, who plays for the Sevens team, he came with me, and we're chatting about you, Guthrie, and about Dylan and about La Rochelle and everything. And then quite suddenly, I see that Dylan's in Cape Town. And I sent him a message. I said, "Where are you?" And he said, "Oh, I'm actually in Newland." And I went and I saw him and, bumped into him at a coffee and chat. And it's so nice. So social media you can use, but also it can be ugly as well, because, there are many times, players are young boys. If they're out, people, they have a photo with someone, the next thing it can be construed wrongly. Players are willing to have photos. If you put your arm around someone, the player's wife might not take that as being right. So there are lots of, I think there's sort of lots of ways that you can really, I don't know, just navigate and work out what works best for you. And I think pretty much the players are very savvy. They don't do stuff during a game week. If they do, they're careful of who their sponsors are, because, they're representing their country, and those are the sponsors that pay their salaries. So you have to have all those boundaries.
So thanks, Annelee. It's really interesting, because I don't know if it's different in the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere and what players are facing, but there's a lot of challenges in the game generally. What do you think about where the game is going at the moment? It'd be great to hear your thoughts on that, and where you from a branding and a marketing point of view, what would you do differently, or what would you introduce?
Sure, yeah. I think I think, the rugby purists that saying that the game, it's just becoming like NFL and there's just so many stoppages and, and it's becoming longer and whatever. But I think you have to evolve all the time. And, I wouldn't dare to talk about the on-field stuff of the game because I don't know enough about it. I know a lot more than when I started. And I know, I've sat in many meetings and I understand the game a lot better now. But I think that all these new innovations and the ref mic, and I saw that this weekend the refs had, for the Six Nations, they had like a mic on here. And when they were talking to the captains, you could sort of see the cap, like, it was all these innovations and talking that the stadium can hear. I don't necessarily think that's a great thing because I think it puts the ref under pressure. And, at the end of the day, the refs also are just people, and they also like players. And I also don't really like refs when I was part of the team, but they're just people. And they, I always have had a great relationship with all the refs. I still keep in touch with a lot of them. I think the game is going, there's a lot of pressure. You saw a couple of years ago that the English teams, went down from 14 to 12 or to 10 or whatever because of financial pressures. So there's pressures everywhere, but I don't think it's only rugby. I think it's all sports, but I think that, World Rugby are constantly innovating, trialing, doing new things. Now there's all these trials in the Six Nations and the 20-minute red card. And I think that is probably a good thing. Maybe Guthrie will think differently and the rugby purists won't. But I think that, playing 14, 15 is not great. So I'm a big advocate for that if they bring that in. But, and that's just my, as an armchair critic, personal opinion. But I think that the rugby, it's very hard to be a rugby administrator nowadays because there are lots of pressures.
Annelee, we have spoken a lot about what you've experienced behind the scenes, but now I'm going to be shedding the spotlight on you. All right? You manage, like you've always been present. You've always been 100% all the way into what you were doing for the box. And you have just mentioned that you have made some sacrifice over the years by not having a favorite, but I can tell you, you probably got over 1,000 sons with all the amount of players that have played for the box. And if you just look at the relationships that you have built, and I know you, the godmother as well of John's son, Tyrone, if I'm not mistaken. So, you might have sacrificed a little, but I can tell you this, you've got such a massive family around you and you can always rely on us if there's anything that you need. And that's the great thing of what you have achieved. But I know at times it has not been easy. Is there any personal battles that you have faced in the years while you're in the Springbok setup that you could potentially share with us and how you got through it? Like if you can share something with us.
I think that thank you, Guthrie. That's beautiful words that you've just said, and they mean a lot to me. Thank you. And I genuinely do believe that. I don't see people for many years, but then we take off like where we were again. For instance, I haven't seen Dylan for a long time. It was great to see him catch up. We just took off where we left. And it is true that once you're part of the Bok family or the rugby family, you actually are there, I'm working a lot more on doing cricket stuff these days, but I'm still more of a rugby person, and that's where my heart is. But I think the long periods away from home and the sacrificing of your family and your personal time, and I was just a small little part, but you are a public person, whether you like it or not. If you are in that role, if you represent your country in anything, you actually belong to your country because that's what you do, and you have to be appropriate and dress appropriately and speak appropriately and answer appropriately, and that's what you are because it is an honor to represent your country. So I think that the main sort of regret that I would have is I didn't have enough family time and spend time with my family, my mom and dad. Before my dad passed away, just before the 2019 World Cup, it was such a shock. I was actually doing a photo shoot for the World Cup with FNB in Durban when I got the call. And it was just such a shock. My dad had a heart attack and he passed away like immediately, just before he'd hit the ground, he'd passed away, and he and on farm where we grew up and where he loved, and at the time it was such a shock, but for him that was the most wonderful thing, because he would have hated to just grow old and not be able to do things for himself. So he was still pretty young when he passed away, but he was, for us, it was a shock, but missing out on not spending a lot of time with them, so the time that I spend with my mum now is very precious, and that's when I said earlier, it makes me a bit sad that I wouldn't have kids to have that when I grow older. But as you say, yep, Tyron is my godson. Very proud of him. He's now the captain of the water polo team at Pretoria Boys High. He's grown up into be such a lovely boy. He's divine. He was at the World Cup final with John last year, and he's just such a lacquer guy. He's just not worried about a lot of things. But John said to him, why don't you please ask Richie McCaw? No, it wasn't Richie McCaw. Why don't you please ask George Gregan something? And he was like, who's George Gregan? He doesn't really, he's not worried about who he is or where he comes from. He's just likes rugby, likes watching, because that was his dad did, but not necessarily playing. His water polo is his thing. So, yeah, I'm very involved in my 8 godchildren's lives and my niece and nephew's life. And I've attended 82 Springbok weddings, so
Wow.
I'm very fortunate and much poorer now. But, that'll come to an end. There's a new era now, new guys coming in, and I only really meet them when I do commercial obligations with them. I don't know a lot of the new guys, but they're always very welcoming, because we're always part of the Springbok family, as we spoke about, But that will also end because, the younger guys coming in and that.
Incredible. Annelee, I think you got a couple more books in you.
Definitely.
Am I wrong? At least one about the best places to eat and drink.
Yeah. Exactly. I think worldwide, I really have eaten my way around the world, and I've been so fortunate to do that and experience that, and meet incredible people. Meet the Queen. I practiced for when the Queen was alive, and Prince William and Prince Harry a couple of times. And when I practiced the whole week, my curtsy, because that's what we were told to do. To anyone who would look at me, I curtsied. And then when I met the Queen, if all the players had bowed, and I bowed as well, because I'd been watching the players and I was so nervous. And then when I met her, I bowed, and then I sort of bowed, curtsied, sort of did the same sort of movement. So, I've been very fortunate. Yeah.
So many incredible stories you could share, and I'd love to read more about. And it sounds like you just have this. You can recall all these events and these people and the memories and the times and the numbers. It's amazing. Yeah, it's such a good insight. Yeah. Do you remember Guthrie's debut?
Yes, I do remember, against Scotland, 2004.
Yeah, when you said that earlier, I was just like, yeah,
Nice and healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Incredible.
And what was always so special for me when a player got his cap. That was really the most special for me. I just love singing our anthem. What a beautiful anthem it is, and this whole Rainbow Nation singing the anthem. But I also love singing the other anthems. I love the Flower of Scotland. I love Ireland's Call. I love the Le Marseillaise. I love the Argentinian anthem. I love every anthem, and I used to always find myself singing them as well. The players would be glaring at me from where they were standing singing the anthem, and I was standing opposite them, because there I was belting out, "Oh, Flower of Scotland," whatever. So I just think, and when a player got his debut, and I remember that, phoning the parents, inviting them to come and see their son getting capped. It's just, those are really treasured moments and amazing moments. It's such, I feel like such a proud mom. And Guthrie says I didn't like the mom thing. I didn't initially, but I did embrace it. And it was being one of the mom and being part of their parents and seeing them get their caps, whether it's 1 cap or 100 caps, just so special.
So just finally, for me, one of the things that stands out is you have probably been there for so many people as one of their most important memories of their lives, and you've been there for so many of them. You've been there for that crucial moment. That's their big. Yeah, it's a real privilege, isn't it?
A real privilege, and one that I never ever take for granted. It's like a really, really proud moment for any player, for any person. I sort of love I always remember Dwayne telling me that when he got his first jersey the day before, he slept with it like next to his bed, yeah, and he'd like to wake up at night and he'd like open one eye and he'd like check if his jersey was still there, you know.
Real.
There's just all these wonderful memories, and and like just being there, for them, if they were nervous, or putting them at ease. And every captain has a different way of doing things. Remember, John Smith used to always write letters to the players if they had a milestone, or if it was a big match, or I mean, every match is a big match, but I mean, if it was particularly, if it was going to be something that we had to win, or if there was a milestone, a first cap or a 50th cap, and every player does things differently, and so do coaches. And I think that's one of the big, you have to adapt, because you're not always friends with everyone. You don't like everyone. I don't like everyone that I worked with, but I respect them, and we had a good working relationship.
That's incredible. Thanks for sharing.
And Lee, you just mentioned there about respect and a good working relationship with everyone you work with. You've worked with 7 coaches, different staffs, 21 Springbok captains. How did you manage those transitions? Like, obviously, it must have been like every time you're starting from scratch, you had a great dynamic going. How did you manage, and what advice can you give there to people that are constantly finding themselves in an environment either where the coach is changing or your team leaders changing in a corporate space? How did you manage that? How did you navigate through it?
Yeah, Guthrie, it was difficult. It was like starting a new job sort of every 4 years in South Africa. And I mean, I think worldwide, but now it's sort of developed, sort of coaches have had longer tenures. But initially, sort of coaches had from World Cup to World Cup, and if you didn't win, then you got fired, and then there'd be a new sort of regime. But sometimes it wasn't like that. But it is like starting a new job every single time. But I think the big thing is the principles of and the ethics and the history and the kind of tradition of the Springbok specifically. But I think any team or any sporting team is there, and those are the principles that you work with. But you'd have to understand that every coach has got a different thing. Jake White used to always keep a Springbok cap in his blazer, and then I would always have an extra Springbok cap because he'd always forget it. And he's like, "Where's my Springbok cap?" And then it would come up, And Heineke Meyer, the first match that we played against Ireland in Bloemfontein, his first match as a coach, and we won that, and he had a green Energade. And Energade was the sponsor at the time, and Energade had this specific Springbok green color that they'd made just as it was like a promotion. Well, a year later, there wasn't that Energade anymore. I had to find all those Energades in the country and keep them with me wherever I went around the world, because Heineke insisted on having that Energade, and he would down it just before a game. So, there were all these different dynamics and things that you had to get used to, but that's what it is. You have to adapt, you have to overcome, you have to embrace, resilience by being prepared for anything.
Yeah, and Lee, before Ben closes off, I can understand why someone like Joe Rogan, he has this 2 to 3 hour podcast, because I feel we can just keep on going. It's just unbelievable. I know you're very busy, but I would like to talk about your book. All right, The First Lady of Springbok Rugby. What motivated you to write that book in the first place? And if you can tell us a bit about it. Yes, awesome.
Thanks, Guthrie. Yeah, I never ever wanted to write a book about sensationalism or the bad things, because listen, there were lots of times where I had to go, and troubleshoot and do different things, young boys get into trouble and those kind of things. I was never writing about that. It was never going to be a dirty book about what's happened behind the scenes, and there were often those things. It was just really to inspire, to motivate young girls, young women, that anything is possible, and to also share, and also closure for me, because when I decided to retire, I didn't want to travel for 9 months a year anymore. I left on my terms, which not everyone gets to do, which is great. But yet I'm still part of that family by doing little consultancy works and contractual things with the guys. So I keep myself in touch with them. I wanted to just share and reminisce about what goes on tour and what it takes to put a team on the field, because like a supporter, I'm a supporter now. I buy a ticket and I go and sit in the stand, which I love, with my mates, and I have beer, and I have to stand in the queue to go to the loo, and all those things that I hate. But I wanted people to understand it's not just getting to the stadium, sitting there, watching for 80 minutes, and then home you go. It's what it takes, what sacrifice it takes, what resilience it takes, what mental strength it takes, what it takes to actually get onto that field. If you're not picked, how you have to pick yourself up, and you have to support the team, because next week there's an injury just like that, you can be on the field, behind the scenes, the logistics of Charles and JJ going on recce's, looking at things, making sure that the field is right. I once had to go and do a recce for a field in New Zealand, and the coach told me that he would never send me again because the field wasn't 100%. So because I didn't know that's my strength, I didn't know that, I thought it was fine, but it wasn't fine. So knowing your strengths and the resilience that it takes, and what it takes, and your commercial obligations, because you've got all these things that you have to do, and that has to be done behind the scenes that people don't know about. But that's everyday jobs. I mean, that's people that have corporate jobs. They do the same. You don't know what it takes to run a multinational company, whereas they don't know what it takes to Springbok team. How many hours at getting up at 6 and getting up at 5 in the morning to train me, to be ready for the 6 o'clock logistics meeting, to be ready, to start your day at 7, to finish at 11 o'clock at night after answering all the emails and making sure that everything's ready. So I wanted to write about what it takes, and to give maybe young girls saying that, listen, anyone can do it. I always wanted to work in sport because that's what I loved. My dad was a player for EP. He played a flanker for EP. He was captain for many years. So I grew up next to the rugby field when I was little, and I remember those happy days running along the field. And I love any sport. I love motor racing, but I only love motor racing since I started watching Drive to Survive. So that's another impact, that Chasing the Sun's had on, and that's also media. Chasing the Sun's had a huge impact on South Africa because they've got behind the scenes on what goes on. So that's what I really wanted to do, and it was never. So you don't make money in South Africa from writing a sport book. It was never about the money. It was about telling my story and remembering the good times and closure for me. So that's what it was about. And the wonderful people that I worked with.
Annelee, thanks for sharing so much today. It's so incredible. Like G said, I could ask loads of questions, and I'd love to know more about your ideas about how you would change stuff and introduce things like Drive to Survive and more, anything like that. But we run out of time, unfortunately, and we got to let you get back to your work, I guess, and looking after all the cricketers, golfers, and rugby players that you still help. Thanks again. One final question, that we always ask everybody is, what lesson would you take from rugby, or have you taken from rugby, that you use in your life every day now?
I think the one lesson is discipline. You have to be disciplined, very disciplined in rugby, in everything that you do. And I think discipline has helped me in all ways. It's helped me in, I love eating, so discipline in eating, maintaining my weight, training, the way I do things. I think discipline is the one thing that I would take out that rugby has taught me. Because if you don't have discipline, you're not gonna make it in rugby.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Annelee, before we sign off, I just think I need to give a special mention to the triangle of power in the Springbok team. Yourself, JJ, Charles Wessels, what you guys, that dynamic, it's unbelievable. And your commitment, realizing you guys had meetings at 6 a.m. in the morning. So really, like we would always say, for someone that was in the military, I would like to thank you for your service. All right. For your service towards Springbok rugby, and to so many former Springbok rugby players, and also to the current players that are still continuing. You had a massive impact on our lives. And I just, like Ben said, we can just keep on going. It is so much to learn. And I definitely think we'll definitely have you back on a more specific thing, and maybe guiding women, young aspiring women that want to achieve success in their careers, giving a bit more in-depth tools. I think that's very important. And we're so doing our best to play a part to make sure there's more awareness around female athletes as well. And thanks for the example that you have set for women all over the world. And you have clearly left your mark on rugby and in the world as well. So continue to inspire, continue to impact people, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much, Guthrie. Yeah, and Ben, it's been so nice chatting. I mean, I mean, 5 years after I've retired, I still am getting you asking me to be on here. It's a real privilege for me to be on and to be able to chat to you. It's been great, and I loved catching up and chatting about it, and just remembering all these great memories.
Thanks, Annelee.
Thank
It's
you.
been amazing.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.